Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, there's kind of a development in the labor stoppage, and we're going to talk all about what it is and what it might mean. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Dodger fans. I am Jeff Snider, Baseball Essential, and this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Vince and I are doing a split episode, so he will be with you for the second half of this show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. And as I mentioned at the top, there have been at least a little bit of a development in the labor stoppage. There were reports on Thursday afternoon that MLB has asked for federal mediation in the bargaining talks. This would have to be agreed to by the union, but basically the league is asking the National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, to get involved in the negotiations. And, my first instinct was, well, that seems like good news because, as you guys know, I've been advocating here for a long time to get some neutral third party involved. Ideally, somebody who actually cares about the best interest of baseball, but just having any neutral third party involved seems like a good step to me. And I still mostly feel that way, but there's a guy he's on Twitter. He's not only on Twitter, but where I know him from is on Twitter. His name is Eugene Friedman. He is one of the leading experts in labor relations, especially when it comes to baseball. He writes about Major League Baseball and labor relations a lot. And he is definitely an expert in the field. And he laid out three possible reasons for why MLB might be requesting the mediation. So I'm just going to talk about the three things that he laid out and talk about kind of the implications of each of them. The first possibility that he laid out is that Deputy Commissioner Dan Hallam, who's handling things on MLB side, he could be, in Friedman's words, requesting mediation to get his own side to stop playing with their food and start making real proposals that might lead to agreement, end quote. So put another way, basically the idea is that possibly Hallam is fed up with the owners who he works for, fed up with them being obstinate, and he wants to bring in a neutral third party to tell them that they are being foolish and that they need to work in good faith and all that stuff. Friedman does note that that's not really in MLB's normal playbook, but that it's a possibility. So that's one possibility to keep in mind. The second possible reason would be if MLB is trying to make the union look bad by forcing them to reject the request for mediation, basically a PR stunt. And that is in MLB's playbook. Friedman says if the union, I'm paraphrasing, but basically if the union believes that the first reason that they actually think that Hallam is fed up with the owners, if they think that's the reason or the motivator behind the request, it would make sense for them to accept the mediation. But if they don't think that this is Hallam trying to get his own side to wake up, then it doesn't make much sense for them to accept mediation. Man. For a podcast about mediation, I sure do have a hard time saying mediation. But it wouldn't make much sense for the union to accept it because thus far, they are the side actually making proposals and concessions. According to Friedman, quote, mediation is usually engaged at a point when the parties are getting close to impasse or have reached what they believe to be impasse. That's not the case here. And then Friedman continues, quote, the only thing that's clear is that the lockout did not produce the results that the commissioner claimed were the goals of the lockout. Speed up negotiations and move the parties towards resolution, unquote. So again, if the union believes that this is just a PR stunt, Friedman says it makes very little sense for them to actually engage in mediation because, in his words, quote, a mediator won't move an immovable object, unquote. And then Friedman lays out the third possibility. He says, there's also a more cynical possibility. That is that MLB is attempting to reach impasse so that it can unilaterally implement its last best offer, We've seen that game before, but then it comes down to whether or not it is premature impasse or real impasse. See 1994, unquote. So basically, a mediator would come in MLB's mind, a mediator would come in and see how far apart the two sides are, and MLB then gets say, like, see, we're totes at an impasse. And it seems like, according to Friedman, that maneuver would create the possibility of the league attempting to unilaterally implement its last best offer. I don't understand the legal reasoning why that would be a possibility, but I assume that Friedman does understand it and knows what he's talking about. And Friedman seems to think that move might backfire on the league, basically because the NLRB would likely find there to be bad faith involved, and the attempt to unilaterally implement their offer would be squashed. Friedman says that, quote, tactically, that would be a terrible decision from MLB, end quote. Well, some of us who are, cynical about the current leadership of MLB might be inclined to think that the terribleness of the idea makes it more likely that it's true. Simply put, a terrible idea from Rod Manfred? You don't say. So that's kind of the three possible reasons that Friedman lays out why MLB might be requesting this mediation. And, I could see a possibility of any of the three. I feel like the second possibility that he lists is the most likely one. Basically that it's a PR game and MLB is trying to make the union look bad by rejecting the request. That is, it seems like the most in keeping with MLB's playbook. The third option, the cynical, terrible idea option, seems like a possibility too. And then the first one seems like the least likely one, and maybe that's because it would be the best possibility for the actual negotiations. So it probably is least likely. And that would, the fact that would require Dan Hallam to basically be working not quite behind the owners' backs, but trying to get them to see the light. And that just doesn't jibe with what we've seen so far. But none of us are privy, including Friedman, as he notes, none of us are privy to the conversations behind closed doors, the private conversations, between the sides talking to themselves and talking to each other. There's a lot that could be happening. And so any of them are possible. But I'm going to come back in a minute and I'm going to talk about kind of what each of these might mean, what it means for baseball moving forward. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day, and keep it locked on Dodgers. Hey, Built Bar, no labor problems there. Built Bar is cranking away bars as quick as you can order them, and every single one of them is delicious and healthy. It's like a candy bar, but good for you, and that is a great combination. All of them are covered in 100% real chocolate. All of them, most Built Bars contain about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar and carbs, 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar. Pull out a candy bar next time you have one and look at the nutritional info. You're not going to see that few sugar and carbs, and you're definitely not going to see that much protein. So if you're looking for a snack that is delicious and also good for you, grab some Built Bar. If you don't know what flavors you like, order a mix box. They'll send you a bunch of different flavors, and you can try them all and see what you like. And then the next time, you can just order exactly what you want. And whenever you order, go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15, and you will get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, I am back, and I'm just going to spend a few more minutes talking about this, and then I'm going to turn it over to Vince for the rest of the episode. Again, as I mentioned, the union would have to agree to mediation. And there are some rumblings tonight, Thursday night, as I'm recording this, that they are likely to reject it. I don't know where those rumblings are coming from. I don't know how valid they are. It might just be people, kind of looking at it logically and thinking, well, it makes sense for them to reject it, or maybe somebody has some inside info. I don't know for sure. But if they do reject it, this would probably lead a lot of people to incorrectly believe that the union doesn't want an agreement. I remember 1994, public sentiment was, if not necessarily pro-owner, it was at least anti-player. It was very much, these greedy millionaires think they need more money. And a lot of that is because we know how much the players make. We don't know for sure how much the owners make. What we do know, using our common sense, is that it's a lot of money. Every owner makes more than any player makes. And that's okay. I'm not anti-owner. I think business ownership is a good thing, and I don't have any problem with somebody who takes the risk to start a business making a lot of money on it. And obviously baseball is a little bit different. It's not really a risky proposition these days to buy a baseball team, because every baseball team basically just prints money, which is why even when Rockies owner Dick Monfort whines about how hard it is to own a baseball team, he doesn't do anything crazy like, sell the team, because that would be chopping down the money tree. So every owner is doing just fine. And what the players are looking for is a more equitable piece of the pie. Basically, they want a bigger chunk of the record revenues that are coming into the league. And that's reasonable too, because the players are the product. And that's, what both sides need to realize, and I think they do on some level, is that this doesn't work without both sides. If you don't have the rich owners, paying the salaries, running the stadium, everything, there's no baseball. If you don't have the players, there's no baseball. They need each other to survive. And it's perfectly reasonable for the players to want a fair share of the revenues that are coming in. And really what this boils down to is disagreements over what constitutes fair. And so, but one thing is for sure, the league will be shooting itself in the foot if this labor stoppage costs them games. There are some fans who won't come back. There are some fans who will be less passionate. There are a lot of fans who will say, you know what? If they're going to act like babies over millions of dollars, why should I give them my hard-earned money? And those people won't be wrong to feel that way. It's not a good situation. And I think some of this, I think there are people who have forgotten the lessons that we should have learned from whatever it was, 27 and a half years ago, when the last labor stoppage. I was in high school then, and there are a lot of people who stopped being baseball fans because of the 1994-95 strike. There are people who never came back. There are also people who didn't come back until later in 1995, Cal Ripken Jr. broke Lou Gehrig's consecutive game streak. That was a big moment for baseball and for America, and that brought some fans back, because Cal Ripken is like, his streak was kind of the opposite of the greedy ball player. This is a guy, he had that reputation of he's just a blue collar guy, shows up to work every day and does his job. And obviously he gets 6 months off a year. So it's not quite the same as a regular job, but Cal Ripken Jr. played every game that his team was scheduled for 15 years or whatever. That's awesome. And a lot of people, that drew in a lot of people. That brought some people back. And then 1998, Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa having their home run chase. That summer was pretty magical. It was pretty awesome. Baseball was the number one story on, not just on sportscasts, but on news broadcasts. They were following this. That brought a lot of people back. And so baseball survived, at least in part, due to luck. Because they had Cal Ripken, they had Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, who, as we all know now, maybe weren't doing that totally naturally. And, that's a different discussion about the league, benefiting from their steroid use and then blackballing them because of it. It's an interesting situation. But my point is, there's no Cal Ripken coming up in the next year or two that's going to bring fans back. There's not going to be a McGwire-Sosa home run race in the next few years to bring fans back. Major League Baseball is going to lose a chunk of fans, not the most passionate ones. I'm going to keep watching. I'm stuck. And that's okay. I like baseball too much. If you're listening to this podcast, we talk about the Dodgers 5 days a week during a labor stoppage. If you're listening to this, you're probably the kind of fan who's probably going to stick around. Not all of you, but most of you are probably going to stick around. But there are a lot of baseball fans who aren't quite as passionate as you and me. And Major League Baseball needs them. If they want to fill a 50,000 seat stadium 81 times a year, you can't do that with just the diehard passionate fans. You need casual fans. And this is going to turn off a big chunk of casual fans if this costs them any games this season. There are people who won't come back, and that will hit baseball in the bottom line, in the wallet. And I think both sides understand this, and both sides are probably using that knowledge and the knowledge that the other side knows it too as a bargaining chip. It's like a stupid, slow-moving game of chicken. And if they run into each other, it's just you and me, Joe and John and Julie, baseball fan, who are hurt by it. And that sucks. So I don't know if the union is going to accept this request for mediation. I don't know if it would do any good if they do, but they got to get this figured out, and they got to get it figured out soon. And I hope they realize that, because it's bad news for baseball if they don't. And that sucks. So that's going to do it for me for today. Vince is going to come along. I'm not sure exactly what he's going to be talking about, if he has thoughts on this or if he'll be talking about something different. We'll have to find out together. But what I do know is that Vince and I both really appreciate you making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day. And we hope you will continue to do that. And Vince will be along in a minute.
Yo, Dodger fans. Vince here to take you the rest of the way. Don't have much else to add on top of what Jeff talked about in the first half of the show. I just will say that from all the reports we've seen, and usually when there's negotiations like this, we see things from both sides. But so far, all we've seen is that every time they meet, the players back off some of their stuff, and the owners don't back off from any of their stuff. So it would appear that the owners want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to not do anything and call in a federal mediator and hope that he works out on their side. Obviously, I hope that it doesn't. I hope that the players get some of the stuff that they want, and I hope this comes to a resolution very quickly. Although I will say, from what we've seen in the past, the players usually end up conceding, and that's why every time there's a new CBA, they end up trying to get more, and it never quite works out. So hopefully they can find some kind of balance, because the players deserve it. Games going up, games getting better, games only going to get better as long as they can figure this out. So shout out team players. But let's talk about BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. As football continues, the March is over. As football continues with a big game in a couple weeks, BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. Not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Go check out betonline.net right now, and don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so not much has happened, as you may know, in the world of baseball. In terms of the world of the Dodgers, there's a couple updates, and more so off the field. But on Thursday, the Dodgers, if you've been around the Dodgers or follow the Dodgers or know anything about the Dodgers, you've heard of the Los Angeles Dodgers Foundation, which does tons of things around LA and gets involved in the community and a lot of great things. So they have the development program, which has been called Dodgers RBI, which has been baseball in inner city and building fields around different cities and having leagues that are for low-income families or cheaper than some of these other leagues, so everyone gets a chance to play. It's now been renamed to the Dodgers Dream Team, and it's still going to serve the same purpose. It's still going to, focus on the future, double down on things around the neighborhoods and in the community, creating resources and services to those in the city. And it's going to be more than just sports. They've always kind of focused on sports, but I think that with this Dodgers Dream Team upgrading from the RBI, it's also going to be, beyond baseball. And with that, they had a goal to reach 25,000 youth annually by 2030, which is, there's tons of children in the LA area, but they don't have to engage in sports. They're going to have other activities. They're going to have other things to do. They're going to be able to further focus on, recreation departments, nonprofit organizations, helping support youth development through sports, but also through other things. And it just means that it's going to be a stronger team overall, dream team. Magic Johnson, Adrian Gonzalez are on hand. So I would imagine they're going to be part of it, or, they've already been part of it or going to remain part of it. But it's just something that the Dodgers get. The Dodgers have always understood that, they're serving their community, and they, not only are you serving your community, but you're selfishly a little bit getting future fans of the Dodgers, and future customers and people that are going to come to Dodger Stadium and, support the team and everything else. So it works twofold, but obviously it's a big development in the LA area, especially in some of the cities that they go to, building those fields, having kids play baseball. I talked about yesterday about, the dwindling numbers of Black players in MLB. There's a lot of talent out here in LA that can serve that, not just Black players, but that's one of the contingencies of where they're at. And a lot more of those children that are considered minorities or have once been considered minorities. So just want to shout out to the Dodgers Foundation, now the Dodgers Dream Team. Look out for that. They're always looking for volunteers. I know our buddy Frank from I don't know if there's still a podcast, but from the Let's Be Frank podcast, he's heavily involved in there. That'd be someone to reach out to if you want to get involved and volunteer and help out and, do what you need to do. The other thing I wanted to mention was the Tulsa Drillers, the AA team. They're involved in this thing that baseball is running called the Nine. And it's a new outreach program that's designed to celebrate the historic impact of Black baseball pioneers. And they're one of the teams that have been involved with it. And it's similar to Dodgers Dream Team now, where they're providing opportunities for youth baseball and softball participation, trying to diversify the game and embrace new fans and then accept new fans along nationwide with all the minor league teams. But the 9 teams that were selected will be, or I don't know if it's 9 teams. I think it's just called the 9. But it's the Tulsa Drillers will be part of it, and they're going to have campaigns trying to reach more fans, trying to show commitment to teams and welcoming all minor league fans and getting everybody part of it. It's part of, so similarly named in nationwide, the RBI program is nationwide. The Dodgers RBI specifically is going to change the Dream Team. The RBI stands for Reviving Baseball in Inner Cities. So they're going to focus on the youth again. They're going to have competitions all over, more pitch and runs, home run derbies, leagues, tournaments, whatever the case is. They're all going to have that. But to get on top of that, or to add more to that, they're going to build relationships with local Black-owned businesses, local artists and entertainers, turning minor league ballparks into a hub for culturally relevant events, concert shows, community events, whatever else it is. And then they're also going to have some HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and the community to provide opportunities for students to start internships, mentorships, know what they need to do in order to get to college and help out in that sense. So, baseball all around. You at the 9, you at the Dodgers one specifically. I'm sure other teams have their different things. You have the Players Alliance that I talked about with Mookie Betts and the way they help out in the community. This is why baseball needs to figure out this lockout, because everyone's starting to push in the same direction, except the owners right now. And it's all toward the direction of embracing, what baseball is, getting the youth, diversifying the game, making sure more people are fans of baseball. I saw a tweet, this morning I saw a tweet, because I'm recording a little bit later than normal, from Trevor Plouffe. I believe he said that he's coaching, and of the 10 kids he had, only 2 could name baseball players, and one of them was his son that named him, and somebody else, and somebody named Mookie Betts. So Mookie Betts, obviously on a grand scale, where I don't know exactly where the league was, but it just shows that baseball is not quite there yet. I'm sure those kids could all name NFL players. I'm sure they could probably name NBA players. Not quite there on the MLB front. And even though MLB has a young influx of talent right now that if you're a baseball fan, you're excited. We got to get these people on a more national scale. Got to get the youth into it. Got to get the youth into baseball, and that pushes all around right now, minus with the owners. So we need the lockout to end. We need baseball to stay on track, and we need these fans. We need these fans as baseball fans. You want baseball to be more popular. You want baseball to be the national pastime again. You want baseball to be the lead story on Sports Center or whatever sports show you're watching, or you want things like my job, BR Walk-Off. You want BR Walk-Off to be prominent space for baseball to be shown off and for kids to know, and hopefully that's where we're going towards. It seems like it with all these different things in the community that teams, leagues, initiatives, everyone's doing. Like I said, we're all pushing in the same direction. But we need the owners to also help out and get on and push too. So that's going to do it for me for today's episode. Thank y'all for listening. We are going to be here next week again. We're here every weekday, Monday through Friday. We should be the first listen of the day every day. Unless we're a little late, then we can be part of your listen every day. But try to make us your first listen of the day every day. If you're not listening to us, you should be. But after you listen to us, you can check out Locked On Bets for your second listen of the day, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts, just like we're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. If you want to follow us on social media, we are on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Samperio. You can always leave us a text or send us a voicemail, or opposite. Leave us a voicemail, send us a text at 323-863-5625, or send us an email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car or if you're at home. Tell your smart device, play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.